If you're enjoying haunted UK fiction, please consider supporting the show on Patreon or Ko-fi. Simply search for Haunted UK Podcast. This city is mental, Tom went on. Seems everywhere has its own ghosts. I've heard all the stories. The thing I don't know is why Lincoln is so bloody haunted. I can tell you, said a voice. The two friends turned their heads to the table next to them. An old man in his late 70s, peaked cap and wax jacket sat beside them. They'd seen him there before many times. He always sat alone, often deep within the pages of the Telegraph. I can tell you, he repeated, leaning on his elbow, with his hand under his chin. Hello and welcome, dear listeners, to Haunted UK Fiction, a sister podcast to The Haunted UK, which features original flash fiction, short stories and novellas with paranormal themes. All stories you will hear were written by a collection of talented writers, authors and storytellers, both independent and professional. In today's episode, we'll be reading Angel of Lincoln, which was sent in to us by James West. You may recall James's other story, HMP Signal's End, was the very first story released on Haunted UK Fiction way back in August of last year. That story continues to scare listeners and accrue positive feedback, so we're very excited to share another one of James's stories. Now get comfortable, grab a little something to sip on, perhaps cuddle up under a blanket to help offset the chills coming your way, and let's dive into the story. Chapter 1. Forgotten Tales. The sun was setting on the city of Lincoln. Atop Steel Hill between the cathedral and the castle, there's an ancient inn called the Magna Carta. Within, Tom, a man of 26, with fashionably combed-over hair, still donning his work shirt and black waistcoat, pushed his way towards the bar, ordered a pint, and scanned the room. His eyes found his friend Andy, late 20s, still in his navy suit and sporting short, spiky hair, sitting on his own at a table by the window, nursing a half-empty pint glass. Tom, after receiving his pint from the blonde barmaid, headed over and settled down in the chair next to Andy. Tell you what, I've never known a place like it, Tom stated, as he placed his freshly poured pint onto a soggy beer mat. Again, as I left work, there were clear footsteps from the upstairs office, and I know there's no one up there, as I was left to lock up. Andy shrugged in response. He didn't have these problems at his place of work. Apparently ghosts don't like to haunt estate agents, but Tom should know better. He's worked at Brown's Pie Shop for years now, and Andy knew Tom was well aware of its haunted reputation when he applied for his job. This city is mental, Tom went on. Seems everywhere has its own ghosts. I've heard all the stories. The thing I don't know is why Lincoln is so bloody haunted. I can tell you, said a voice. The two friends turned their heads to the table next to them. A man in his late 70s, peaked cap and wax jacket, sat beside them. They'd seen him there before many times. He always sat alone, often deep within the pages of the Telegraph. I can tell you, he repeated, leaning on his elbow with his hand under his chin. Tom leaned back in his chair and held his pint to his chest, a look of surprise on his face. "Can you?" "Go on then," he said, bemused. Andy leant forward to listen. "The veil between the living and the dead is thinner when an angel is near," the old man said quietly. "What?" Tom asked sharply, sharing a confused glance with his friend. "Let me start at the beginning. Did you know there was a war in Lincoln about 1,000 years ago?" the old man asked. The blank look on Andy and Tom's faces confirmed they hadn't. "Course you ain't," he continued. "The church at the time didn't like to advertise its problems. Anyway, during the early 11th century, the people of Lincoln and surrounding areas were at war with the Vatican." "Bullshit," Tom cried with laughter. "If the Vatican were at war with Lincoln, it would be well documented. We would all know about it." "Not," said the old man, pointing a stubby finger towards Tom, "if at the time the only people who could read or write happened to be members of the church. The church was keen to keep this information well covered up. Imagine the problems it could cause the Catholic religion. Well, it was evident enough during Henry VIII's reign, but a king apparently is harder to control than residents in a small English city." "But why was Lincoln at war with the Vatican?" asked Andy. "The Pope of the time found out that the people within the walls of the city of Lincoln were not followers of Christianity. Turns out Lincoln had a large following of Satanists. The largest ever, apparently," the old man replied. "The church tried to change the people's views but couldn't. To make things worse, they were gathering followers rapidly. Their tricks and voodoo convinced people to follow the occult too easily. With the way the church was then, the Pope decided to wipe out any threat to Christianity. His solution was simple: hire an army to wipe out the Satanists within the city of Lincoln." Tom snorted and took a large gulp of beer, but the old man continued. "Anyway, like I said, Lincoln and the church were at war. As the story goes, one morning an army of Christians from various parishes in England, hired and spurred on by the representatives of the Vatican, started an attack on the castle. The sheer number of Christians outnumbered the Satanists 10-1, so when the Christians finally broke through the castle's barricades, it looked grim for the Satanists. But, mid-battle, an angel appeared." "Why would an angel appear?" asked Andy. He had to admit to himself the story up to this point appeared mildly possible. "Well, did you know the devil used to be an angel?" the old man asked. Andy nodded, but Tom replied with, "Huh?" a little louder than intended. A few heads turned in their direction. "Yeah, basically, the devil was an angel called Lucifer who tried to take over as God, so God banished him to hell," Andy told his friend before taking a quick sip from his pint. "Exactly," the old man continued. "This angel, named Nathanielus, was a friend of Lucifer, and seeing all the followers of his friend dying within the castle didn't please him at all. So Nathanielus decided to abandon heaven and descend to earth to help the Satanists fighting the losing battle. Now, when an angel descends from heaven without permission, that angel gets transformed into something hideous as punishment for leaving. That is why, when Nathanielus appeared within the castle walls, he appeared 7 foot tall with huge wings, massive, curved tusks, and glowing red eyes." The old man paused here for effect. Andy and Tom, unimpressed, waited for him to continue. "Despite the appearance of this monster-like creature, the fight continued. The Christians fought bravely, but Nathanielus was a game-changer. Nathanielus charged through the attackers, slaughtering everyone in his path with claws as sharp as razors. Of course, these events did not go unnoticed by the good Lord Almighty. Furious that Nathanielus would disgrace God by descending to earth to help Satan worshippers, God turned Nathanielus into stone. Seeing this spurred the Christians on. Shortly thereafter, they took the castle and won the battle. The battle was also seen by Lucifer, and of course the devil was angry. Not only had he lost many followers, but he also saw an old friend who abandoned heaven for him get turned to stone. This proved too much for him. The devil appeared, huge, dark, and surrounded by smoke and flames, trident in hand, as he stood on the castle gate. Dark clouds formed high over the castle. Seeing this, the Christian soldiers unsurprisingly ran for their lives. Looking to his friend frozen in stone, the devil used what little magic he possessed and proclaimed, "When upon the fallen angel's eyes sun sets, returned from stone, his body resets." What in the name of my left testicle does that mean? Andy jumped slightly. Tom's loud outburst had shocked him. His focus had been so intent on the old man's words. "Even I can figure that one out, Tom," Andy told his friend. "When the sun sets, he won't be stone anymore." "Ah, you weren't listening carefully." The old man shook a finger at Andy. "When upon the angel's eyes sun sets," he repeated again slowly. "The angel's eyes must see the sunset." Of course, Christians thought this problem was an easy fix. They put the stone monster in one of the many vaults under the city and hoped that it would be the last of it, but of course it wasn't. Over the next 300 years, there were over 100 attempts by surviving Satanists to steal Nathanielus from the vaults in order to resurrect him. Luckily, they never prevailed. But after a particularly close call, the church decided something must be done. The stone monster couldn't be destroyed. Many had tried over the centuries, but stone made by God is indestructible. The Dean of Lincoln during the 14th century was aware of the existence of Nathanielus hidden deep within Lincoln's vaults. He came up with an idea. He shared his plan with the Vatican and was able to secure the Pope's approval. So, it was that Nathanielus became a gargoyle perched on top of Lincoln Cathedral. He was placed high up so no mortal man could reach him, and strategically settled onto a ledge facing east, where his eyes would only ever see the sun rise and never the sunset. The old man relaxed back into his chair, lifted his whiskey, and repeated slowly, "The veil between the living and the dead is thinner when an angel is near. That is why this city has lots of ghosts." "Bullshit," Tom muttered under his breath. He took one last large gulp of his pint and rose from his seat, then headed to the toilet. Andy watched his friend disappear around the toilet door, then looked out the window of the Magna Carta, up towards the towering spires of Lincoln Cathedral. Interesting story, he thought to himself. But could it be true? Was there really a stone angel high above them, watching the sun rise but never set? A great story, he thought again, but a story only. An old legend, told to scare children. Chapter 2. Reflection. 600 years. 600 years I have sat here waiting. I have watched trees fall, buildings rise and crumble, and new ones take their place. I have seen humans born, grow old and die. I have watched the world change. I have seen 600 years of sunrise, but never in that time have I seen it set. I have sat here alone, high on my perch, on the tower of Lincoln Cathedral. Today, however, is different. Today, a new sight befell me. The large building opposite, beyond the cathedral green, was clad in structures of steel pipes and covered in steel sheets. Repair work, I guess this to be, but never before have I witnessed the reflective powers displayed by these sheets. They must be newly crafted, for after their erection they reflected like a giant mirror, a sight I have not seen before. The world behind me. The city looks wondrous. I recognize nothing, but my eyes do not search the vision offered by the shiny surface of steel. Instead, my gaze is drawn solely this evening to the sun and its slow descent behind me. Finally, after 600 years, I am watching the sun set. As I watch the sun disappear behind roofs of grey slate, I feel warm. I try to flex a claw. It moves. I tense the sinuses of my arms. Slowly and stiffly, they move. I begin to stand. Finally, I am free. That brings us to the end of this episode. We truly hope you enjoyed this eerie, inventive tale. Stay tuned to Haunted UK Fiction because we have many more fantastic, spooky, scary, and downright terrifying stories to share with you. If you have an original story that would send a chill down our spines and you would like to submit it for review, simply send it in to hauntedukfiction@hotmail.com. That's hauntedukfiction@hotmail.com. Until the next time, stay safe and take care.